No. Oh, I'm live. Yes. Hello, hello. Hello, world. Is anyone in chat? Say hello. Oh, I can hear myself, which is interesting, but oh, I see. It's my own Twitch chat. Cool. Cool. All right. We're figuring this out. Welcome to Roguelike Celebration. We are live. I'm going to give people a little bit of time to gather in the theater from our wonderful social space. And yeah, it's so wonderful to have everybody here and to see people having a good time, finding bugs, or at least feature improvements, which is wonderful. You are all participating in the beta discovery of how the social space is going to work. We've still got some people filtering in here. Well, and the captions are even existing. Very exciting. All right. I mean, I'm going to kick things off here. So welcome to the Roguelike Celebration 2020 preview. If you've never been to Roguelike Celebration before, welcome. This is going to be our 5th year of doing this and bringing together all these roguelike loving folks to discuss our favorite genre and all kinds of wonderful procedural things and get to socialize with each other. So as you can see, we've created this unique social space this year as a way to kind of get everyone together and encourage that feeling of catching up with old friends or making new ones, even though we don't have a physical venue. If anything, it's a cool opportunity for people around the world. Even our mod team is split all over different countries. And here we are all in a social space together. So a little bit of administrative stuff to mention. You should be able to see on the left-hand bar at the top, I don't know which direction that is, but a link to our code of conduct, which you should have read when you joined. We have no tolerance for harassment, and there are a lot of ways to reach out to members of the moderation team if you have any concerns, and we'll acknowledge it right away. If you're not sure if something is a code of conduct problem or not, please reach out to us anyway. We'd always rather hear and do our best to reduce harm rather than not know about it. So you can always check that in the link. You'll also be able to recognize our moderators by their pink usernames. You can directly message us about any kind of code of conduct concerns. And if you have questions about the conference, same way that you'd be able to walk up to us and ask us a question, you can always, if you don't get an answer in general chat, message one of the people with a pink username. We're the folks who will probably know the answers to your questions. Also, as I mentioned, this is a brand new social space that we've been making. It's mostly the work of our talented organizer, M, also known as Laserwalker. And if you notice any quirks or have thoughts about the space, you can leave feedback by the @ sign within the space itself, or you can message M with the Laserwalker. And hopefully you already had a chance to do some exploring. The theater here is where all the streaming is going to take place, but the other rooms will be places to hang out, and we'll have more opportunity to chill out after the kind of talks are done. So enjoy the space. Let people know if you have any kind of thoughts and if you notice any kind of bugs and quirks, because yes, as we roguelike developers know, things live in kind of a perpetual beta. So to the final point there, you can also see a schedule in the left-hand bar. Several of our speakers for the full event in October have graciously agreed to share a little kind of sneak peek of what their planned full talk is going to be like. This is really cool. It's a chance to get excited for what's going to be coming up in October, for the speakers to get some love for their great ideas that they've been working so hard on. And we should have just enough time for a question or two between speakers. So if you have a question for someone, you can ask them in the theater chat. I'll be doing my best to catch them and then repeat them back to the speakers as long as there's time. So please feel free to do that and to give them some, love and attention for agreeing to, on fairly short notice, give us a little bit of a sneak peek of what they're going to be talking about. And hopefully it'll give you some excitement of what you're going to be able to tune in for. If you're here because this was like a free ticket, just so you know, like you can go through Roguelike Celebration, the address there being roguelike.club, and you can find the tickets for the full event, which will be in October, and we hope to see you there. So we are a little bit early on time, so I don't know quite if we'll be ready, but that is quite enough of me talking. It looks like we probably would be ready to get going a little bit early if people are all right with that. So to do at least a little introduction, our first guest is going to be Darren Gray, who many of you know as the host of Roguelike Radio. He's a self-described community busybody and the developer of many small roguelikes, including Broken Bottle, Fire Trail, The Trapped Heart, and Time to Die. So if Darren is ready, then I'll pass things along to him. If not, I can keep on keeping you all occupied until then. We good? We're figuring this out as we go, folks. Doing our best here. And hello, Darren.
Hello. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, you're coming through great.
Hi. So I'm Darren Gray. This little helper I've got is called Violet. She's strapped to me because she needs to be kept upright right now, otherwise she might vomit everywhere. There's still a small chance that will happen anyway, so that should add a little bit of drama and tension to this talk.
Amazing.
So I'm here to talk about Sarah Palin, the free-spirited, independent American politician who likes to cause her own troubles within her own party. I'd also like to talk about Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, a small, fairly self-contained country that nevertheless causes all sorts of consternation on the world stage. And I'd like to talk about HAL 9000, the computer program that seems to be going against its maker's wishes. I'd also like to talk about this elephant, this clown, this furry fantasy, and of course about the @ symbol who tends to die a lot. I am of course talking about rogues because the subject of my talk is going to be what is a rogue like. Now, not what is a rogue like. Right? I'm not interested in the endless definition debates that occur on the internet. No, I'm interested in what is a rogue itself like. So what does it mean in our culture? The different things that I was presenting on earlier, those are all examples of rogues in our culture, or at least they describe themselves as rogues. And I would like to investigate what it is about them that makes them rogues, and what is it about roguelikes that makes them rogue-like, if you understand me, and how much do we like roguelikes to be like rogues, and how much can we design our roguelikes to be like rogues more? These are the sorts of things I want to tackle in my talk. So we have all these various ideas of what a rogue is. We, of course, all know the computer game. 40 years ago this year, the computer game Rogue was made. And it was called Rogue, okay? That's a bit of an obvious statement, but words have power. They have meaning. This wasn't called Hero. We do have games like Hero Quest, right? Or A Bard's Tale, or Dungeons and Dragons. We've got lots of other things in the same sort of genre that have different words and different associations. This was called Rogue. And I believe that part of the reason for that was that you are playing a rogue in it. You're playing a relatively weak character. You're not playing a big warrior character. And that character is surrounded by unknowns, surrounded by threats, and can quite easily die, and has to use cunning and ingenuity to get by. So I think a lot of that is in there in the game. And the main focus of my talk is going to be, well, what are the different elements of rogues in culture that we have that are in the game Rogue and in the descended games of roguelikes and roguelites and all the others? And what can we be doing more, right? How can we be designing our games to embed the ideas of rogues and to make sure the player feels like they're playing a rogue, feels like they are playing Sarah Palin, if that's the aspect of rogues that you wish to go for. So, before I wrap up, I want to present to you a little bit of a spot the difference game. I'm going to show you 2 pictures, and I'd like you to look for the subtle, tiny differences between these 2 different images. Okay, you ready? You ready? Here we go. Okay, 2 pictures here. Okay, both of them are artistic representations of the computer game Rogue, as featured on official box set artwork for the game. Now, you may immediately be able to see a few slight differences between them. Let's analyze these in a bit of depth, okay? On the left-hand side, you will see a burly man holding a very large phallic weapon, gripping it tightly. Oh, yes. It's splattered in blood, it's covered in jewels. It's a very flashy item that he is gripping so hard. The man himself, is going like that. This means he's really strong and tough. That's what means. If you ever want to communicate that image of yourself, just go to people. It works. He's not wearing a lot. I wouldn't say his outfit's entirely on the practical side. He doesn't seem to have a backpack, which I think is quite an important missing detail, actually. Unless he stores his entire inventory down in that little tight crotch thing that he's got. Maybe so. Maybe there's lots of room there. In the background, rather inexplicably, there is a woman wearing a bikini, a possibly fashionable medieval item of clothing, I don't know, chained to the ceiling of a cavern, or possibly chained to the word rogue itself. The word rogue, incidentally, seems to have bullet holes in it. Now, I don't know about you, but personally, I'm not entirely convinced that this is the most accurate and detailed representation of the computer game Rogue you can get. So let's look on the other side, right, where we have a different art style entirely. This is a more outliney style, more minimalist style, but it's an arresting type of style. It catches your eye. We see a character there who is sensibly dressed, very important, reaching up to grab a jewel. So he's not after some sort of bikini-clad princess in the background. No, he's after some sort of treasure that seems to be attached to some kind of altar or some sort of special feature in a cave. And he's reaching up. I think that's a really important detail there. He's having to stand on his tippy toes to get to this treasure. It's showing that he is reaching from a position of low power to attain something greater. And, of course, very importantly, in the background, there is a lurking threat, a menacing set of green eyes. We don't know what they are. There is a mystery to them. But we do know that they're dangerous, that they're threatening, and that this character is at this moment of celebration of achieving some sort of great thing, also in extreme danger. But we do not know what that danger is. It's lurking there in the shadows. So you can see there with these two images from Rogue itself, different ways of communicating about a game, different ways of communicating concepts within a game. And we can see how that can affect the sort of the player's idea of what a game's really about. So we're going to talk about that and many other things at the upcoming Roguelike Celebration event in October, and I hope you'll all be there to join me. If you have any quick questions, I'm very happy to answer them.
So far, do not see any questions, just some comments about the spot the difference. I like the suggestion that perhaps the woman chained to the word rogue is the protagonist. That would have been an interesting version of Rogue. If anyone has questions and can put them into the chat, then I'll be happy to read them. I'm certainly excited about this. I think that we've had a lot of discussions about roguelikes, and yet I think this is the first discussion I can remember about the word rogue itself.
I do actually have a clip from when we interviewed Glenn Wickman about the game and why it was called Rogue, and he said it's because it was a short word. And I've never been more disappointed in a hero of mine.
Yeah, we have a comment of, did you know that the original D&D didn't have rogues, since every tomb-robbing adventurer was a rogue in and of itself?
I didn't know that, actually. I always assumed that the game Rogue took its name from the D&D class Rogue, so I wonder when that first appeared in sort of Dungeons and Dragons lore.
I will say the short names make sense. When I was in the NetHack source code, one of the great pains was the fact that the short naming convention is very important.
And they're all playing it on Unix terminals originally, the original Rogue, so it had to be something quite quick that you could type in.
Yes. Yeah, there's discussion. There may have been thieves in D&D. I wonder,
Mm,
are you going to discuss the difference between a thief and a rogue?
I am.
Oh,
Yes. I'm going to get
excellent.
into all sorts of entomology, actually.
Entomology.
Excellent. Yes. Entomology. I'll somehow weave that in.
A lot of sneaky bugs. All right. Well, if there aren't any particular questions, then we will perhaps let you go, Darren. Thank you very much for joining us, especially with with the little new adventurer here for a very early conference appearance.
Okay. She says,
Wonderful. All right. Well,
right,
can't wait to
you.
have you back
Bye.
for the main event. Thank you for coming. The mention of discussion happening for that question is in the theater chat. Yes, this is the discussion. It is the theater chat in our social space. That is, we can see your messages. You are part of the discussion. Excellent. All right. Well, you are doing discussion, doing it so well. Next up, we are going to have Julian Day, who is a software developer and poet from Winnipeg, Canada, which I'm very happy about as a Canadian myself. He's the author of Shadow of the Worm, a traditional roguelike, and he'll be giving us a sneak peek of his own talk. Are we ready to hear from Julian? Wonderful.
Great. All right. Hey, everyone. So, as has been mentioned, my name is Julian Day. I'm the author of Shadow of the Worm, and this is just a quick teaser talk that I'm calling Poetry at the Edge of Roguelikes. There was a subtitle, but I'm leaving it off because as I started writing stuff out, it didn't make sense as much anymore. Here we go. All right, so about this talk, yes. So I'm Julian, I'm developer of Shadow of the Worm, which I've been working on since, I would say, 2011 in July was about when I started it. I've been involved in the roguelike scene kind of since the Usenet days, probably since 1998 was when I started hanging around the NetHack news group. Before that, I played Rogue a bit as a kid, but it didn't really stick. NetHack was the first one that I really got into. And then from there, I kind of made my way into Atom and kind of fell for that style of a more open game. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about poetry and Shadow of the Worm, and specifically for this teaser talk, I'm going to be talking about building a long poem around a form called the Spenserian stanza. In the full talk, I'm also going to be talking a little more about some of the other uses of poetry in my roguelike, including some descriptions I've worked into the item codex. I'm going to be talking about Matthew Henderson's Roguelike, which is a poetry collection released actually just this year, and about Christian Bach's work to, Christian Bach's work to create a kind of poetry that can outlast all humanity in his Xenotext project. So this is Shadow of the Worm, and I'm very happy to say that as of, I want to say May or June is when I did my release with tiles, I can actually show you something pretty instead of, just an ASCII screenshot. But so this is my baby. It's actually my third roguelike and the first one to really get off the ground. I'd written one in Pascal in high school, one in C in university, and they didn't go anywhere. And it's as much as kind of a Zen garden for me as an actual game. I've included things like alcohol poisoning, things like that I thought would be great, but which don't actually have much outcome on the game. But kind of the key thing there for me is that really, I use it as a test bed for things that I want to work on as much as creating an actual game, kind of to the detriment of the game. So a bit about the poetry in the game. There's poetry in the item codex. I've been sneaking prose poetry into some of the item descriptions, and in particular wildflowers. I'll talk about that a bit more in the full talk. But in this, I want to give you kind of a sneak peek of the long poem that I've been working on for the last few years now, called Tell in Floridel. It's based on don't know why it keeps skipping forward. It's based on a modernized version of the Spenserian stanza that Edmund Spenser used in The Fairy Queen. Tell in Floridel tells about kind of the early days of the world. I'm using it as kind of like a lore building exercise for myself. You can find it in-game in the library, or you can use the Lua console and just load it for yourself and take a look. It was meant to be just a little bit of formal poetry practice, but 4 years later, I can say that it's really taken on a life of its own. So this is not Tell in Florida. What this is a stanza from Edmund Spenser's The Faerie Queene. He was a contemporary of Shakespeare, and he wrote in a style that was kind of deliberately archaic. It was a little more like Chaucer than Shakespeare. And as you can see here, it's got a distinct style. It's kind of clunky on the modern ear, but as I was reading this back in 2015, kind of as a stress relief during a long project at work, I found that the rhythms really got into my head. The structures, the way that the stanzas closed on Alexandrians, it all just kind of stuck in the back of my head, so that a year later, when I set about to add a bit of poetry to the game as game lore, then I kind of thought, well, okay, maybe I'll do something based around the Spenserian stanza and do a bit of formal poetry. So next I'll show you a stanza from my poem. So this stanza is actually split in half, and I've worked with Fredrik Skarstedt to provide an illustration for it. What I've really gone for is a poetry that's kind of more in modern English than in sort of a middle to early modern English. I try to use modern words only. I try to not end all the lines on punctuation like Spenser does, what poets call end stopping. And I try to make something that flows easier. So as I was working on this over the last few years, it's been something that's really kind of tied into the game. I've been kind of basing game lore on the poem. I've been sort of working on the code and feeding stuff back into it. And as I've been doing this, I've just been kind of adding to the poem like 1 or 2 stanzas a week, every week. And then, you know, suddenly I've got a couple thousand lines of poetry easily. A moment passed, and then came creeping in a thing outside of place and time, a beast whose movements seemed to be carried by the wind, its long steps effortless. Now all the trees waited and watched. The creature stopped and stretched. It rose up from all fours to stand upright, the giants staring helplessly, their dread a potent paralytic, at the sight of something stitched together out of hate and night. So in the full talk, I'll be talking a little more about the poems and lore within the game. I'm going to be going into Matthew Henderson's excellent poetry collection, Roguelike, which is one of my favorite books I've read this year. And I'll be talking a bit about Christian Bach's Xenotext project and how he uses generative poetry to try to find a way of creating poems that will sort of outlast humanity and potentially even the world itself. So just a few links and credits, and if there are any questions, I would love to hear them.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much, Julian. That is exciting stuff. I think that I'm very curious about those intersections between poetry and procedural generation. If anyone has questions for Julian, please go ahead and put them in the chat. I did see one mention earlier from Evan Balster about how it reminded him of miscellaneous poetry and descriptions for Caves of Cud and Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup. Is that something that you kind of had in mind for some of this?
I would say not really. I mean, my background is very much heavily Atom and NetHack based, and so for me, it was kind of more the in-game lore through the Mad Minstrel and Atom, that kind of thing. I have played very shamefully little amounts of Caves of Cud, and that's something that I want to do kind of in the near future. And Dungeon Crawl Stone Soup, I've played I would say a little bit. I think collected, my best run was 2 runes. I've never actually won.
Pretty good, yeah. There's a question from Ragnarok Rose, which was, can you show us the add item command for Shadow of the Worm again? I just downloaded the game and want to take, the scrolling. The scrolling makes this difficult. Basically want to take a look.
Yeah, I'll just put it in chat right now.
Wonderful. There's also a question. So is Shadow of the Worm a NetHack styled kind of kitchen sink roguelike?
Very much kitchen sink roguelike. I would say not really NetHack like as such. I see it somewhere in that sort of Atom and NetHack style of, you know, you won't harm anything by putting more things into the game. It is definitely not a Stone Soup style, streamlined, tight game. I'm incapable of writing a tight game, so.
Yeah, relatable.
Yeah.
Evan Balster also asks, are you familiar with Laser Domain?
I know of it. I haven't actually played it, though. I remember that coming out, I want to say late 2000s, mid 2000s, sometime in there. It's something that I've been meaning to play for a long time, but I never actually did. But yeah.
Cool. Also a question from Darren. You mentioned ADOM. Were you inspired at all by apologies, the scrolling makes this difficult. The tension by the Mad Minstrel.
Yeah, that was actually part of it. Was the I think it would have been in one of the early versions, like pre 1.0, where I just kind of stumbled into there and just found that clearing and started chatting with him and finding those little poem fragments that kind of explain things about the world. Like there was one about like you should wear 2 sources of fire resistance before going into the tower, but said poetically, right? So things like that. So definitely yes. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. We have actually lots of questions. Michael Taylor asks, how do you go about brainstorming for lore and poetry?
That comes in a bunch of different ways. So I would say, like, for the poetry, I've been kind of working with an idea in mind with this long poem where I've been kind of sketching stuff out, but kind of keeping in mind that it's a very rough draft. And so I've been only ever adding to it. The end result is that, there's some stuff in there I'm quite proud of. And there are, for lack of a better term, kind of some garbage stanzas. The beginning isn't very good. It takes about 10 pages to get interesting. So I've been kind of keeping notes around that where I want to go with it. But because I do so little on it week to week, I kind of have a lot of time to kick ideas through my mind. In terms of the lore itself, one of the things that I really try to do with Shadow of the Worm is capture a feel that's kind of similar to Ursula Le Guin's Ursi books. That was the first fantasy series I really got into as a kid, along with the Terry Brooks books. And it was those the Ursi books I found were absolutely beautiful in terms of the description and the lore, and that was sort of a style that I've been trying to roughly, maybe not copy, but get the feel of while I'm working on the game.
Yeah, super cool. I think I'll try and grab one more question. Tidwart asks, Julian, I'm also using early modern English in my roguelike. Any advice for the scrolls keep getting me? I've got a feature request. Oh boy. It's about basically grammar. I'm struggling to get the exact wording, but basically early English advice for grammar and kind of the styling that way.
Okay, so I'm a bad one for advice on grammar for writing something in early modern English. I was trying to go for something that was in modern English, but was using like an adapted early modern English form. So I was making sure that I wasn't using archaic words or phrases, things like that. I was using enjambment and to sort of allow it to flow and feel kind of more like prose. I don't have great advice on
accurate,
on doing something very, very accurate, other than, if you read through the Fairy Queen, like that's kind of my source material for getting super, super familiar with that particular form.
Yeah, a good source corpus.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. Well, that wraps us up. If anyone has more questions for Julian, are you going to be around in the social space?
I'll be in the social space.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. Looking forward to your full talk.
All right. Thanks.
All right. And I believe that we are going right up into the next speaker. Yes, we are. So next up, we have Todd Furmanski, who is a researcher with a focus on interactive digital environments and procedural content generation. He has a PhD in media arts and practice, as well as an MFA in interactive media from the University of Southern California School of Cinematic Arts. His focuses include emergent algorithms as applied to interactivity, as well as a developing history of games and virtual spaces. So take it away, Todd.
Hi. Hello, everyone. My talk was going to be basically my experiences of a Frankensteinian combination of applying roguelike paradigms of simulation procedural content generation, unique world each time you play, with the paradigms of Myst, a static image point-and-click adventure game where you move turn by turn and through a space. Both of these leveraging modern quote-unquote real-time graphics as driven by a GPU on modern machines. A lot of this came out with things I'm kind of, I mean, again, this is applying my most personal experiences. These are not good or bad things in and of themselves, but as a game developer, I've kind of been tired of obsessing over performance, frame rate, getting a game to run at 60 frames a second, trying to make real-time movement not look goofy, trying to make animation characters not run into walls or fall off buildings or run, get stuck in floors, and building tutorials that try to teach people how to use a 16-button 3-joystick controller to walk and look around. That seems a little bit overkill to me, at least right now. When I do want to obsess over features that would take over an entire development cycle, I want to obsess over visual style and pretty pictures. I want to obsess over the algorithms, what drives the world that a player will inhabit. And looking at ways of making simple, accessible interfaces. And again, simple, I know, doesn't mean easy, but trying to look at something that is inviting, that again, can maybe eventually turn very complicated, but will ease the player in. To that end, I'm looking at kind of the almost very high simulation-based, almost improv-style element of a lot of good roguelikes, combined with kind of the painting that you can walk through, that games like Myst and kind of invited that imagery. I love experimenting with digital aesthetics. I mean, a lot of my career came in through the 90s and early aughts, where all computer games looked the same because we were still trying to figure out how to make a 3D polygon draw on the screen. But nowadays, there's a lot we can do. So I've looking at ways of making games look like paintings, look like pencil sketches, look like Mediterranean mosaics. And while you could do this in real time, animation is a whole other aspect that, again, I'm at this point don't want to look into. I want to just try to look at getting a static image that looks pretty, look at composition, look at camera placement, while eventually being in a roguelike scenario where the world is still running underneath as you're looking at the image, or as you decide to push forward and move forward or look around. And again, leveraging the speed of a GPU, but still not obsessing over trying to get something at a nice, steady frame rate. If user takes about a tenth of a second to click a mouse, that's an eternity when dealing with a computer, when dealing with coding. And there's a lot of fun and a lot of freedom you can have with that amount of time. Again, looking at simulation, it's still really hard to simulate everything all the time. But if you have a tempo of somebody looking, again, like in Rogue and like in Myst, you often have a turn-based system where a human brain can take an eternity, seconds or fractions of seconds to make a decision, and that's a lot of time where you can use to simulate weather, simulate day-night cycles, simulate temperature dispersal, simulate magic systems. One game I'm developing using this system, I want to kind of have all materials almost have a chemical simulation, where if you cast a fireball, that will not only cause damage to a monster, but then potentially melt snow and singe cloth and weaken metal. And again, people have experimented with that, and then Rogue has leveraged a lot of that in an ASCII type simulation, ASCII type visual aesthetic. But then if you're in a space where you have a malleable digital setting that was normally meant to be real time, but you're rendering image by image, there's a lot you can do with that. And then, this is still, I think, the hardest part, is trying to get an interface that is inviting and could tend toward complexity, but it's still basically, imagine a painting you can walk up to and say, oh, there's a house there. I want to go to that house. Oh, I'm at the house now. And playing with it, I wanted to play with the ideas of distances as well, of having, a space where the town and the castle aren't 10 feet apart, because if you have to walk there in real time, that you kind of shoot distances. But if you have everything be relative or based on points of interest, where like in literature, you can say the hero or heroine walked for a month to reach the distant sands, the distant crimson sands of such and such to find the fabled caves. You can have the player experience, roughly that, and then have moments, salient moments, move in and out accordingly. Anyway, see you at the conference. Here's my information, and I can also go and I can show you, if we have some time, just some of the little things I've been working on. A lot of this is based on, I know some of you might know of Forska, which was kind of the kernel that this grew into.
Yeah, we still have a few minutes. Also, if anyone has questions, again, let me
Certainly.
know in the theater and I can pass them along. We got some compliments for your screenshots, Todd.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. Let's see. Yeah, so this is indeed procedurally generated terrain and island. And using A-star not to have agents pathfind, although I have been doing that, but actually create paths between points of interest, between, in this case, ruins.
It's exciting. Penjoshi asked, Todd, do you plan on releasing a game in the near future in the style you describe?
Yes, the tricky part is this is almost a toolbox. I'm actually trying to make almost a stock roguelike, so I don't have to worry about making the perfect game and having it take forever, although that's almost happened where I'd fallen into that trap that a lot of people do. But being kind of a classic dungeon crawl, I'm even playing with this aesthetic that just kind of based on a Mediterranean, like Roman mosaic or similar. But then I also have ideas of doing almost a procedurally generated haunted house game, almost like Betrayal at House on the Hill, where there's a haunted house, there's a monster, but you're not sure what the monster is. So you, like any horror movie protagonist, you might do stupid things like go into the basement to try to look for something because you're not quite sure what you're facing. Maybe it's a vampire that you can only see in mirrors, or maybe it's a werewolf that melts when you throw water on it. So you have to kind of figure that out in kind of a situation like this where it is turn-based. But in this case, I'm on a wooded island here, and so I want to go to that distant tree there. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of ties in. Aaron Santos asked if ProcGen puzzles are on the table.
That's definitely, I think, I've been tempted to kind of look at things beyond just combat, even though I think a lot of projects I've been kind of doing are almost exercises where I want to kind of try to make sure I get the basics right. But trying to have open-ended puzzles is I think a very challenging thing, but something I'm looking at, including things like translation puzzles and ciphers. I love looking through and trying to find, like, let's say you find a library, but you don't know the language of any of the books, but then you might have to figure that out through context. One other crazy idea I had was almost having this space but removing the actual graphical image entirely and try to have a textual description of wherever you are. So in this case, instead of seeing this image, you say, you are by the water. It is high tide. It is noon. And such, and then have, as the time goes by, you say, the sun is now setting.
Right.
You smell...
Resort kind of style.
Exactly. But then but it's a live simulation that can get granular. One of my implicit mottos is fear no platform. I kind of I'd like to ideally, I know it's impossible ultimately, but to kind of separate out the abstracted world space or game state from whatever platform I might hypothetically be on.
Right.
And that also includes how you might decide to look at this.
Yeah. Well, really exciting. Definitely looking forward to seeing more at the full conference. Thank you so much for sharing a sneak peek at this point. And yeah, there are a couple other questions we didn't have time to get to. So if you're around in the chat, then hopefully people can direct that your way. So,
excellent.
All right. Thank you very much, Todd. All right. Keep moving along. Our next speaker is going to be Tabitha Sable, who's been a hacker and cross-platform sysadmin since the turn of the century. Her first exposure to Rogue was under OpenBSD, Mac 68K 2.3 on the trusty Quandra 800, which soon led to commissioning a 386 server and offering shell and game services to her fellow students. Today, she can usually be found teaching adversarial techniques to other engineers, sharing system engineering viewpoints with security folks, bicycling, and saying, I wonder what happens if we... So, all right, very excited. Take it away, Tabitha.
Hey, hello everybody. I'm here. I can see your comments. So, you know, like the bio says, I kind of came into roguelike in a different kind of way, like through the technology sort of way. You know, in older, in really old historical Unix distributions, like the Berkeley software distribution Unix in the 70s and 80s, there was a series of games that shipped with the system, and those games had kind of evolved over time and accumulated, and were basically the games that the people who were making and distributing the system liked, and the games that they were playing on the system. And so, you know, I had this very traditional Unix environment in OpenBSD, and you know, I wanted to do something neat. And so I was looking around and I saw this directory, user shared games with games in it. And I was like, okay, you know, I'll try these games. And there were a bunch of games. There's you know, there's Hunt the Wumpus, and there's the Colossal Cave Adventure, and you know, there's a Star Trek text-based RPG that I could never really figure out how to play. And there was Rogue. And so, you know, I just kind of tried it because it was there, and it was delightful. And so that was sort of how I came into that. And so, you know, also this kind of background has given me an interest in history of things. And so that's where this talk starts, which is talking about the history of how the hardware that we used to interface with Unix evolved over time, and how it made changes in what software was possible. And then, you know, as more software was possible, then the hardware would change again in order to, you know, meet the demands of new software. So I'll tell a little bit of that story now, sort of in the preview. You know, we see on the picture here in a museum a display of what one of the earliest Unix systems would have looked like. You've got several cabinets worth of gear, a big desk, nice chair to set in, and a teletype Model 33. And that was how you used Unix a long time ago on a system like that. And so we'll look a little bit at the history of that. You know, the history of that started much longer before with printing telegraphs. So, you know, the telegraph was invented, Morse code along with it, in order to be able to send information over a wire with a very simplistic encoding method. And to be able to send and receive Morse code required learning quite a bit of skill. And so a machine that could do that and make that easier was welcome. And so, you know, there were several designs for printing telegraphs, starting with this one from the 1800s that we see here that was just not practical, and eventually getting to the point where it was essentially an electric typewriter with the printhead connected to some kind of serial connection and the keyboard connected to that connection. And so you could connect two of them together over a line and you know, type on one and it prints out on the other. And you know, those quickly took over from Morse code because they were quicker and easier to use, and became, you know, the way that news and things like that spread very rapidly. So when the switch was made from batch-oriented computers to interactive ones, teletypes, you know, teleprinters were already a thing, and they were an obvious choice for how to interact in real time with the computer. And you know, especially in Bell Labs, there were a lot of teletypes around, and that's where Unix was invented. And so naturally, you had Unix coded to work on paper teletypes. And as time passed, the limitations of paper teletypes became apparent. And so video display terminals came into usage. This is a picture of an ADM3 video display terminal, which was famous for being the first video display terminal that was under $1,000 US. This is the video display terminal that was in use at Berkeley when folks wrote VI, like when I believe Bill Joy was writing the Ed for Mortals editor that evolved into the Unix editor VI that we know. And these had a lot more features, obviously, because they don't have to scroll the paper endlessly. And that's a good question, which I'll hop to at the end. So the software had to adjust to these new capabilities just to be able to derive the terminal. And then eventually people began to write software that would take advantage of these capabilities. They got fancier. Here's a picture of a VT100, which is sort of, in a sense, even today, like the canonical idea of a glass terminal. It had a lot of features, and software took advantage of it and sort of became a de facto standard. Those went out of style, and we all started using computers with graphic displays built into them and the ability to run their own software. And in order to access these Unix applications that were written for terminals, now we use terminal emulator programs. With all of these capabilities, like I was saying, the software has to adapt to it. And one of the ways that happened was the development of the Curses library, which is an optimized screen redrawing library for doing bitmapped graphics on a terminal. And in my opinion, Rogue was one of the killer apps for Curses. And how I got introduced to a lot of this history was by starting to play Rogue casually and kind of learn about where it came from there. So I'm looking forward to giving a much more in-depth sort of sift through this history, including the history of the various kinds of support software necessary to make this happen, and the way that some roguelikes have taken advantage of it at the main event. So looking forward to that and to seeing people there. I see that we are at a bit of time now.
Yeah, you have 3 minutes. You said you could see the questions yourself.
Yeah. So what horrors unfold when playing a classic roguelike on a paper teletype? So I'm going to have to answer this question speculatively, because I have not yet managed to get my hand on a genuine paper teletype. But in general, the way that all of the fanciness happens on a glass terminal is that the glass terminal is watching the characters that are coming in on the line, whether it's a physical like serial line plugged into a machine somewhere, or whether it's a software construct that has data coming in it. And many of the characters are just written out to the screen without translation, but there are also many meta characters that alter the state inside the terminal. And so you can experience a little bit of this kind of badness on a modern Unix system if you use a terminal emulator that has a very strict emulation mode for some historical terminals, like a VT52 or a VT100, and then set your term environment variable to something new, like VT220, and then try and use fancy stuff. And so the horrors that I would expect are, you're going to get so much garbage. Like, you will get the lines of the screen, and during the initial draw, you may even actually see the map that you expect to see. But then as soon as you move as soon as you move the character, that whole optimized line redraw thing is going to kick in. And so it's not going to give you anything pretty. It'll give you some junk characters that, to the right kind of glass teletype, mean move the cursor here and overwrite these two characters. So it's going to turn into line noise real fast. And honestly, I think it would be fun, and I would love to try it.
Yeah. Awesome. That sounds wonderful. All right. We are at 8:10. There are more questions, I know. So hopefully you can chat those out in the social space.
I'm going to actually go and eat some dinner and then hop back on the social space. So
excellent.
I'll see you all soon.
Yes, thank you. And that gives me a perfect transition into the fact that we are now going to take a little 10-minute break And we will be back for a few more sneak peeks. And then after another short break, we have a special sneak peek that is an interactive game that people will have a chance to take part in. So take a little break, have a snack, drink some water, check out the social space, and be back here in 10 minutes for some more great content. All right. Everybody get to the theater. Useless for me to say this since you only hear it if you're in the theater, but hopefully someone can give a shout, get everyone back on board. I think we do have most people already, so I'm actually just going to get started since we don't want to hold off too long. So without further ado, our next speaker is going to be Gab. Gab's passionate about many creative outlets, including games, music, visual art, and performance, and he enjoys experimenting with weirder ideas and looser styles. So, I want to take it away, Gab.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm going to try to share my screen right now. No, I don't have a second monitor. Can you see my slideshow okay? Is that working? Okay. So my name is Gabriel Koenig, and this is a quick preview of the talk I'm going to be giving in October. The full talk is called Good Mutation, Bad Mutation, Player Agency, and Procedural Generation. But for today, I'm just going to talk about a few of the ideas I had when first approaching the subject. So I make video games in Unity 3D. I've been doing that since 2013. I'm self-taught, and kind of as a result of that, I've been making games mostly by myself. I usually use stylized graphics, a lot of physics stuff. I find it lends itself well to working alone and having emergent experiences instead of having to create everything from scratch. And kind of on that tangent, I got hooked on procedural generation when I started making Jet O'Mara in 2017. And more recently, I made Tested Titans, which came out this year. So procedural generation in Jet O'Mara ended up being largely aesthetic. And it was inspired definitely by No Man's Sky, having an infinite universe that could be explored. And for things like placing objects on planets, buildings and rocks and all that, I was able to use physics and raycasts to automate all the work, which saved me a ton of time. And similarly with things like color palettes, I was originally creating them manually and then realized it was faster to generate them on the fly. Further, I'm not a great animator, so early in development, I set up a procedural animation system that combined ragdoll physics with some raycast targeting, and that ended up being a defining aspect of the game. You can see these monsters walking around here. Those enemies were created procedurally from parts. And overall, the procedural systems made the game exciting for me to keep testing day after day by myself because nothing I saw was ever the same. Which eventually I became obsessed with documenting all the planets that I visited, knowing that they would disappear forever whenever I restarted the game. So I took tons and tons of photos, and I also created a pretty deep photo mode for the game so that I could do this more effectively. And in hindsight, it's really interesting to me how this was an opportunity to engage creatively with the procedural systems. And it became a really important focus to me, even though it wasn't a big part of the game itself. So in the end, the experience of playing Jet O'Mara gained almost nothing from the procedural systems that I used for making the game. Might have made it more replayable, but I could have probably made the same game entirely manually in about the same amount of time. And the photo mode was arguably the aspect of the game that showcased procedural generation best, but that was kind of a separate experience from the main gameplay. So the question became, how can I make engaging with procedural systems a more integral part of the overall game? So as I was finishing Jet O'Mara, I was already getting ideas for what to do next, and I've been following Wobble Dogs on Twitter, which was a hugely inspiring project for me. And the concept of mutation in Wobble Dogs I'd also seen earlier in things like this genetic cars simulation that I'd seen at some point, and remember just watching it play on repeat, kind of constantly generating new cars. So as I started prototyping my new game, I knew that I wanted mutation to be a core component. The first challenge was setting up a control system that was flexible enough to support a character that could fit any definition of basic traits. So in this case, I settled for a bipedal physics-based system, which you can see very early prototype right here. And then I quickly prototyped a basic mutation system for characters. But at this point, I wasn't sure exactly where I was heading. So looking at Jet Omero, procedural systems were very hands-off for the player. They were always happening behind the scenes and creating the illusion of a fully predetermined world. And what I wanted to achieve with Test Tube Titans was the opposite of that, which was a chance to go hands-on with the procedural systems, to creatively interact with them and take some ownership of that aspect of the game for the player. So taking on that challenge with Test Tube Titans significantly changed my outlook on procedural generation. Where I'd previously seen it as a tool, it was becoming a way for me to effectively collaborate with any player picking up the game. If you're interested in hearing more, then I'll be doing the full talk in October. And I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has in the meantime.
Excellent. All right. You people know the drill by now. Questions in the chat, and I'll repeat them through. I'm certainly very excited. I think it reminds me of some of the discussions that we've had in terms of, and just some papers I've read in terms of the relationship between procedural generation as a collaborator versus as something that is more, you know, that you observe from a distance.
Yeah, for me, working alone, it definitely felt like a collaborator all the time, which is fun. Feels like you're not working alone.
Yeah, it's interesting to find a way to put that into the player experience as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. One question from Vicky01. Were you inspired by Spore's algorithm to animate player-made creatures?
I hadn't played Spore, but I was definitely aware of it, and it was the concept was super appealing to me, but I didn't want to go into that kind of meticulous design by players. I wanted to make a lot of the design happen procedurally, and then players, well, I'll get into it in the talk. Yeah, Spore was an influence, but not a huge part of what ended up in the game.
I do think there's something appealing to the roughness of some of the animation in Test Tube Titans. There's also mention that it, Todd mentioned it reminds him of Carl Sims' work, if you're familiar with that.
No, I'll have to look that up.
Oh, cool. Yeah, and there's also discussion of semi-procedural authoring tools like plant tools that populate an authored space with procedurally generated flora, that kind of generation curation workflow.
Mm-hmm.
Vicky asks, are you happy with the name? I would be. It's a damn good name.
Yeah, I think it stuck once I came up with it. I was happy with it. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. Well, I'm very excited to hear more about this. And thank you so much for joining us for the preview. And hopefully you'll be around in the social space if people have more questions.
Yeah.
And excellent. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. Excellent. Moving right along. Next up, we have Kat Manning. Kat is a narrative designer and writer currently at Riot Games. She's also worked on critically acclaimed indie narrative games, including Pathologic 2 and Where the Water Tastes Like Wine. Her interests include procedural narrative generation, ancient Greek drama, and making unwise decisions, as evidenced by her PhD in literature. You didn't put it in your bio, but also mentioned that I feel like Blaseball is basically an area of expertise at this point for Kat. So, welcome, Kat.
Hello. Please let me know if my volume is working. I think it should be. My screen is definitely working, despite the fact that you might be surprised by that. But all right. Hey, everybody. My name is Kat Manning, and tonight I will be giving an excerpt of my talk for the Roguelike Celebration. You know, the whole thing that's coming up soon that you're definitely coming to since you're here already. My overall talk is going to be about how to design mechanically meaningful character traits and how that can apply to other kinds of generative systems. Today, I'm going to focus on traits in The Sims 3. The original intention was, I suspect, to produce a robust and vivid pool of traits that players could use to create unique feeling characters. While the game was successful in offering players expressive granularity, there was a twofold trade-off. First, many of the perceptually unique traits that the game offered, in fact, had a great deal of mechanical overlap, leading to indistinct gameplay effects. Second, the sheer number of the game's maximalist systems meant that later traits either joined an already overwhelming set of overlapping simulated behavior or were confined to showing off an expansion pack's features in an entirely self-contained way, which led to the trait feeling comparatively meaningless. So, one second. Sorry, give me just one second. There we go. So, The Sims 3, released in 2009, moved away from The Sims 2's binary personality system, which you'll see on the left. That had personality points distributed among 5 fixed traits, and 3 instead added a number of unique traits, most of which were positioned orthogonally. You'll see that on the right. I'm borrowing that term from Emily Short, who uses it to mean traits which are not directly correlated to each other. Sims who have the trait friendly do not necessarily end up with the trait party animal, for example. The player can put those two together and correlate those traits mentally in the model of the sim. Make sure I'm... There we go, that slide. So they can put those traits together and correlate those traits mentally in their model of the sim, but the game itself does not impose that correlation. With the exception of a couple binary traits like slob and neat or evil and good, the game doesn't close out traits. And while it splits them into 4 overall categories, it doesn't require players to pick a certain amount from any. But in this attempt to add more granularity to character behavior, the game ended up with multiple similar traits. This is an issue that Kate Compton has pointed out in what she's termed the 10,000 bowls of oatmeal problem that you've probably heard already and you will definitely hear again. That what we're looking for in a system is perceptual uniqueness rather than indexical uniqueness or mathematical uniqueness. 10,000 bowls of oatmeal with their grains arranged differently are still going to look like 10,000 bowls of oatmeal. And The Sims 3 falls into something similar. It has a lot of traits that are perceptually unique in the player's mind, but essentially end up offering the same gameplay affordances. Traits that govern social behavior fall into this most noticeably, so let's take a look at this next slide. If this were a live talk, I would ask if anyone can tell me the difference between irresistible and flirty. If we're talking about my sense of what these words mean in natural language, I would tell you that flirty is probably how a person reacts to the outside world, and irresistible is how someone reacts to them. But both of these traits are going to impact a similar set of actions. How often the active sim's flirt action is successful, and the base attraction of the target sim to the active sim. The mechanical difference is that romantic actions are available to flirty sims at a lower romantic score with their partner, while irresistible sims still have to wait, but they build up that romantic score faster. Which means, from the player's perspective, that the effect isn't really distinguishable. It just means flirtatious actions are available for sims with the traits earlier in the get to know a romantic partner loop. And the same overlap happens with social traits like friendly, charismatic, and schmoozer. Now, there's clearly a desire to offer players different ways to have a romantically or socially successful character. If I describe someone as charismatic, I don't always mean that they're warm, and if I called someone a schmoozer, I would basically be insulting them. But the fact that they share a common mechanical overlap is frustrating in gameplay. If there is a meaningful difference to the player, it's in how they interpret those words, not in being surprised by emergent gameplay. And in that sense, there's a perceptual difference in how these traits are presented to the player and how they might act, given how they personally think about the sim's personality. So traits in this case are much more about co-authoring than they are about giving the game distinct patterns of NPC behavior. Also, The Sims 3's tendency towards maximalism was further exacerbated with the release of expansion packs, as tends to historically happen with any iteration of the franchise. But because there were already so many expressive traits which overlapped with each other in the base game, new expansion pack traits often either felt like this expansion pack's version of a pre-existing trait, or entirely designed to show off feature X of this expansion pack. As a result, their integration into previously existing systems was pretty shallow. Now, there were obviously mechanical reasons for this. Designers couldn't anticipate which previous expansions players owned, and so had to only draw on base game possibilities. But it did have the effect of making an already crowded space feel more cluttered. There are also traits in The Sims 3 that seem like great ideas, which model realistic behavior that players can recognize and relate to. Consider the absent-minded trait, which on paper means that absent-minded Sims will occasionally stop an action they're doing, get up, pause, and then go do something else. And you can probably see where I'm going with this. Absent-minded Sims became infuriating for some players because they had to be constantly monitored to ensure whatever their player had set up in their queue hadn't just been randomly dropped by the game. It was a great idea as a simulation on paper, but it completely disrupted the core loop of gameplay. No matter how interesting a trait seems on its own, it's going to be interlinked to the rest of your game systems, and you need to consider how your traits will interface with the rest of your core loop so you don't create a UX nightmare for your players. Essentially, having expressive traits, rather than tightly mechanical traits, worked for The Sims 3 specifically because it already had a significant number of pre-existing systems those could link into. Character appearance, home decor, profession choice, etc. were all ways that players could incorporate those expressive personality traits into the gameplay, even when the behavioral AI didn't surface them explicitly. That said, they didn't layer particularly well over the game's already maximalist systems, which is probably for the best given how noisy the game already was to play and only got more so as expansion packs went on. But with that in mind, I don't believe that most people who are listening to this talk are designing a sprawling, big-budget AAA life simulation. In that case, you don't want to add a bunch of extra cosmetic systems for your expressive traits to interface with. Rather, you want to interweave them into the core systems of your game from the start. And that's what I've got for today.
Excellent. It's very exciting. I'm very excited for the practicality of what you're going to be talking about. And some
Good,
very
I'm
cool
glad.
Examples. Yes. All right,
5
as
minutes.
usual. Yeah, we have a few minutes for questions. I certainly agree with Ragnarok Rose, who just said, Cat Manning, cheers.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, any questions? Subaltern Games said that they're just here for Blazeball enlightenment.
I did not plan to talk about stats in Blazeball, but I will say that they're both expressive and mechanically interesting, and I probably will write something about them at some point, now that I am now on actual vacation for a little bit.
Excellent. Evan Balster says, I'm interested in Kat's thoughts on constant passive traits versus those that come into play contextually or reactively as a corollary, quantitative versus qualitative effects.
Yeah, so in terms of passive traits versus traits that come into play sort of actively or situationally, I would say that I'm concerned about passive traits in general, especially that are sort of like generally limited or globally limited. Tanya Short has an excellent example of this in procedural storytelling and game design, where she points out that even if you have a trait that looks on the surface passive, there are always ways that you can think about the other systems that you have and link it into ways that make it feel more active. So for instance, if you have a character who's chaste, what this necessarily might mean, it might look like a passive trait, right? As in, they are less likely to accept romantic options. We see this in Crusader Kings 2. Spoiler alert, that's going to be a little bit of my talk. That said, that doesn't necessarily just have to be it's harder to start a romantic relationship with them, right? They can be gossipy about other people's romantic relationships. They can be a little bit judgmental. They can try to actively interfere with couples that already exist if they feel like they're being too lustful or open with their relationships. There's a lot of different angles depending on the gameplay systems that you have. And so I would say that I'm inherently worried about passive traits in general, but that I also don't think that a trait inherently has to be passive. I think that with almost all traits, and if they're not, you should throw them out, but you can at least probably think of 1 or 2 ways to interface a current trait with your game systems. And if it doesn't interface with your systems, you might want to think about, okay, why is it here? What is it expressing about the game world that I want to add? And is there another trait that works within the systems that I can do that? Or is there another way, art-wise, design-wise, music-wise, with sort of other non-systemic ways that I can indicate that sort of type of feeling?
Right.
So those are sort of my thoughts there.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I think there's some other really fantastic questions. I don't think that we'd have time to dig properly into them. So hopefully you'll be able to have a chat. And also for the people with such wonderful questions, come make sure to see the full talk itself, where I'm sure Kat will have a chance to probably get to some of these points.
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. All right. Thank you very much for joining us, Kat, and can't wait for the full talk.
Thank you. I'll be in the chat. See you there.
Excellent. All right. And it's very appropriate that Kat Manning mentioned Dr. Kate Compton, also known as Galaxy Kate, who is indeed our next speaker. Dr. Kate is a longtime generative artist, inventor, and programmer. She wrote the first paper on procedural platformer levels, generated the planets for Spore, created the language Tracery, and invented an early phone-based AR system. She currently works as an open source researcher, developing the next directions for Tracery and creative chatbots. Her mission is to design artificial intelligence to augment human creativity and to create tools that bring AI into the hands of poets, artists, kids, and weirdos, which is a wonderful aim. So welcome aboard, Kate.
Hi. Hopefully this will work out. My computer is not quite strong enough to both stream and have two monitors. But I am here with Ishtar. So here's Ishtar.
It's worth it to have a cat.
Yep. And yeah, I'm going to talk today about making polite programming languages. So this is a few of the lessons that I've learned from making Tracery and Chancery and Artbot Club, which is my hosting site for them. So everybody cross your fingers and hope this works, because I won't be able to see this screen later. All right. Or Keynote will have hung. Cool. Anyway, like I said, this computer is a little iffy, so I will just kind of gesture. Gosh, how about I very quickly try to close Keynote and reopen it? As these things happen. Sorry about this. At least I showed y'all a cat. Don't ever upgrade to Catalina, folks. It's not a good idea. All right. Hopefully y'all can see my screen now. So yeah, my talk is, Alexei, is this showing up? I can't do picture-in-picture. All right. Well, I'll just assume it is. Sorry, was that working? Anyway, hopefully that worked. Sorry about this. Yeah, okay. I'm also in the middle of a cross-country move right now. So yeah, making a polite programming language. How to design generative languages without programming language degree. So I have a computer science PhD now, but I actually never took a proper how to make a programming languages course. So there's a lot of really interesting information that programming languages as a field has for us. It tells us that programming languages have formal properties. You might have heard some of these things like if it's Turing complete or if it can halt. What can we prove about this programming language? And there's a lot of these that I don't know about that the field is interested in. Unfortunately, they also have a lot of informal properties. So everybody knows that C is bad, or that JavaScript is bad, or that Lua is a strange programming language. But what makes these things bad or weird or strange? Why is C# a different language when you use it in Unity than when you use it on the desktop? Unfortunately, it's also hard to say useful things that you can prove. And so programming languages as a field has often struggled with how do we talk about what programming languages are good for, or ways that they're useful or play well with others, or all these kind of non-provable things, because it's a field that's very grounded in mathematics. So often these tasks fall to HCI. But these are things that you might want to say about a programming language, such as this language is easy to write. It's easy to remember what my program does. You can use this language in lots of strange places. Like, is this a language I can use to make Maya scripts? Can I use this in Roblox? Can I use this in Unity? Can I run this on an Internet of Things object?
Just to let you know, Kate, we can see your slides, but it's on the first slide.
Gosh, darn it.
Yeah.
All right. How about now? Can you see my slides now? I can just present from Keynote.
It's interesting because the Keynote view is what we're seeing, but I'm not seeing a transition beyond the first slide.
Huh. Gosh. I wonder if this is a Catalina issue.
Yeah.
All of my issues are Catalina issues.
Just say no to Catalina. Doing live tech fixing. Potentially, could you link one of us the slides if they're hosted anywhere, and we could try?
I definitely cannot.
Okay.
Oh, I have a really good otter gif here too.
Oh, not the otters.
Yeah. Oh well.
Well, you're doing a great job talking about it.
Do you see anything? No. Nope,
Same
no.
screen. Same screen. We've just got your
Gosh
first slide
darn.
in the keynote view.
Anyway, you know, maybe I can go to. Can I go to?
Yeah. Possibly if you try exiting share screen and re-entering, that might also help give things a little bit of text.
I'll do one last try, and then I will just talk through it.
Yes. People in chat are saying they're enjoying just hearing your thoughts. The slides are surely good, but you're certainly comprehensible even without them. And you gave us a cat, which everyone appreciates.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for watching our technical situations unfold in real time.
Entire screen.
Yeah. Why not?
All right. How about now? Do you see different things?
We do. I see a slide about politeness.
Okay.
And programming.
It's not my first one. Okay. So,
all right. Excellent.
Cool. Speed run the talk. Okay. So yeah, it's hard to say useful things that you can prove, like this language is easy to write. What does it do? Where can I use it? Can it run only on my machine? And so you could have something like the Compton completeness theorem to match Turing's completeness, which says that a first-time user can a language is Compton complete if a user can construct an expressively significant program in 1 hour using only the computing device they had on hand. And connected to a service or platform that has social meaning to them. But of course, this is not actually a useful theorem for programming languages because it's very unprovable, but you could look at a language and ask whether or not it fulfills this. And also there's a difference between what a programming language is and the way we write programs. So nobody just writes C. You write C in an IDE, you have a compiler, you might have a debugger. Processing actually did a really great job with this because processing realized that their language processing, which is a variant of Java, was not even as important as having an IDE and a debugger and a compiler all in one go. And so they made an IDE that the language isn't just the language is the whole IDE. And you see this with things like Scratch as well. So a language is an environment. It's the language, it's the IDE, it's the error messages, it's the community, and it's the tools and libraries. It's not just the specification of the language. A language, as promised, here's a seal GIF. The language outside of its normal environment is not the same language. So I found a couple of properties that I'll talk about in my main talk, but languages can be scaffolded, which means that they have assistive features that keep you from writing the wrong thing or help you write the right thing much faster. They're unfoldable. If you've ever used HTML, you know that you can just write plain text. So you can write plain text for a little bit, and then you can maybe add a tag, and then maybe later you can get into some JavaScript. You can slowly unfold the language. You don't have to write the whole language all at once. And then little is a property of a language that actually is recognized by computer scientists. A common example of a little language is regular expressions, which is a sublanguage all of its own that tends to get socketed into other things. So languages that are little often are the input or output of other languages. They kind of fit into wherever you need them to be. So regular expressions are in just about everything. So you can find regular expressions in JavaScript, but also in C, also in all sorts of other weird tools. So little languages are languages that politely fit into the space that they need to fit into. So yeah, my talk will be about my work on tracery and chancery, and then also about how these languages fit into other ecosystems and how I'm making ecosystems for them. So I'll be talking about things like syntax, but also Blackboard and what it is, MIDI sliders and why MIDI sliders might be a part of your language environment, ambient albums, promotional LARPs, and mid-century Swedish epic poetry. Because spoilers, this was what you see on the right there is a bot that I made for a group of Swedish ambient musicians to advertise their new ambient album, which is based on some Swedish epic poetry about people slowly going mad in space. But this is all run by my new language Chancery, but also with a bunch of tools that allow you to control it dynamically. So yeah, that is my talk, and still managed to be on time-ish.
Yeah. Absolutely wonderful. And yes, mirroring
Chaos talk.
Chaos talk. As people say, even it was great without the slides, but it was worth getting the slides working. Oh man, the share screen now. We've got infinite.
Yeah. So
infinite
chaos
StreamYard.
talk.
Yes. Fantastic.
Sorry,
All right. We are going to probably skip the questions just because the timing of the technical stuff went a bit late, but hopefully you'll be around to answer some questions in chat.
I actually probably won't because I have to finish moving.
Right. Okay. Well, enjoy that.
Chaos talk.
Chaos talk. And well, then people will just have to make sure to tune in for your full talk in
Twitter.
October. Yes. Yes. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us, especially mid-move. All right. Yes, and so we're going to be taking another short break here where we're going to be setting up a game called Help Me Steal the Mona Lisa, which people will be able to partake in from home. So take a little break there while we get that set up. And once again, the goal is to be back in, at this point, 9 minutes from now. So I will see you all then. All right. And we are back. And we are joined now by Eli. Hello.
Hi there. Just FYI, I'm going to be like looking like this, so you can't really see me while I'm looking.
All right.
FYI,
We have
like this, so you can't
audio from your desktop that we can probably bring down a little bit if possible. Audio from
Let me see about
your
that.
desktop that we can probably bring down a little bit if possible. Audio from
Does that help?
Yes, though it's picking up on what I'm saying.
Oh.
Yes, though it's picking
that's
up on what
okay.
I'm saying.
Did that stop now?
Let's find out.
Oh, that's
on what I'm saying. All right, let's find out. Oh, nope.
All right, let me just close this other chat, which means I will have this window closed. But all right, let me just close this other chat, which means I will have this window closed. But okay, how's the echo now? I'm hearing it too.
Well, let's see if it might be.
I'm
No.
hearing it too. Who is echoing?
Well, let's see if it might be. No.
I'm hearing it too. You guys can see me troubleshoot over here.
No.
You guys can see me troubleshoot over here. Okay, try talking now.
All right. Oh,
I don't hear echo.
that's promising.
Okay, try it now.
Okay.
Oh no, I hear echo. I
Oh,
don't hear echo. Where is
That's
it echoing
promising.
from? Okay, try it now. Am I in this twice? Because let's try. Am I in this twice? I'm probably gonna drop from the stream really quick. I'm probably gonna drop from the stream.
we got another chaos talk on our hands, so thank you everybody for bearing with us here. We got another chaos talk on our hands, so thank you everybody for bearing with us here. Also, the fact that you can still hear me means I think that it is coming from this screen. I think that Kawa's suggestion was that if you mute this Chrome tab, means I think that it is coming from this screen. I think that Kawa's suggestion was that if you... Huh? I think that that is done good. There is no more echo. Excellent. So at least I'm no longer causing echo. We'll see if we can get your voice back. All right. Welcome
Can
back.
you hear me?
I can hear you.
I don't hear an echo. I think it was the Twitch stream up there. That's right.
Okay.
I had open. That's totally my fault. I've been watching it this whole time, and I didn't think to turn it off. Sorry, everybody.
All right.
Cool.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you. And you know what? We had a scheduling snafu where it said that this is going to start in 6 minutes. So in a certain sense, you're still early.
Great. Awesome.
Well, you want to introduce yourself since you're already here?
Yes. I am Eli Delventhal. Hello. I'm one of the 3 Delve Bros. You can see our logo in the bottom right there. I realize I'm wearing a different company's t-shirt right now. You can ignore that. Just forget about it. So I've been working in the game industry for like 12 years or something like that, and on games of various types my whole life. Most recently, been working on this roguelike called Blitzkeep. The sequel, Blitzkeep Unleashed, is coming out soon. And that's called Flint Games, but I left that to start this Stealth Bros game with my 2 brothers. So literally it's 3 brothers. Our last name is Delvin Tall, so you get the idea. This is one of our latest games that we've been working on. We're trying a bunch of different prototypes. So this is pre-alpha. This is definitely an early game, but it's totally playable. The general gist is that... let me hide this thing, actually. Okay, so the general gist is that I'm playing as a really awesome guy named Luc Debonair who likes to steal stuff from museums. And so I'm going to be going in this museum that you can see in the background. And you guys are all my tech team, kind of like in Mission Impossible or any of those other things. So you're going to go to that link on another window, ideally. Unfortunately, I didn't hook it up to the sweet chat that we have already. So maybe get another window that just sits right next to the Twitch chat or the Twitch view. And then go to this URL. You do need the pound sign. And once you're there, you should see like a command line terminal. It's going to ask you to enter your name. And then you'll be able to hack stuff, which, of course, you can't hack because we haven't actually started yet. So I think, should I just start now or should I wait till 6:10? What do you think? I can look in the chat here and see what people see. You guys can type in the chat. I'm watching it as well if you want to say stuff to me. Oh!
Yo!
What's up, bro? He's
literally just
my brother,
rolled
so
in
I
from
can
the
say
wilderness.
What'd you say? You got back from the wilderness?
Yeah, I was camping this weekend. Am I heist linking?
Yeah, let's do
All right. I'm gonna hook it up.
So Zach has been working on most of the back end for this, and I've been working on most of the front end. So I think if we're all ready, I'll get started. Does anybody... How about we have at least one person type in the chat? Let's go, and then we'll start. Not seeing anybody. I don't know if they're waiting for 6:10 or not, which is when it said we were going to start originally. How was the wilderness, bro? Was it real good?
The wilderness was exceptional. I think maybe my kid has night terrors or something. So that was exciting. It turned out to be like a really crowded campsite. So there's like tents and stuff everywhere. We're all right on top of each other. And then my 2-year-old is like every 2 hours of the night, just like waking up inconsolable screaming. So that was fun. But like other than that, it was great.
Is it Mika?
Yeah, Mika.
Whoa.
Mika is she's a character. She's gonna grow up to be something. Not sure what exactly, but we'll find out.
Maybe a game developer.
Could be.
It's a crazy profession. I think everyone here knows. Well, I made my own bread for the first time this weekend. That's also very exciting. I gathered wild yeast.
I saw your starter.
Yeah, it's cool. It's been growing throughout the week. That's a roguelike in itself, because you have to kill off tons of bacteria in order to get the bacteria and, I guess, fungus. Yeast is a fungus, right? That you want.
Yes. Yeah, it feels like a fungus.
Something like that. Anyway, yeah, it was good. It was a pretty good first try. Not the best bread ever, but some solid bread.
Sweet.
All right.
Well done.
Let's wait one more minute and we'll hit the go button at 6:10 since that's when we were supposed to go anyway.
Sounds good.
So this morning I took the bread and I made French toast out of it.
Oh,
and that was also good.
French toast is pretty much the best thing you can make with bread.
I think that's true. Followed by croutons.
Bread. Croutons? That's just stale bread you chop into little cubes.
But you also bake it. And put,
right, you take your stale bread, you chop it into cubes, and then, I don't know, man, I'm not with you on that one.
Fair enough,
just
fair enough.
Crunchy, it's like, it lets you, they're like bread ghosts. That's what crouton is. Like, it lets you remember what bread used to be like when it was good, but like, that's it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. All right, it's 6:10, so I'm gonna hit play. So if you haven't already, head to that link.
Yeah.
I'm Luc Debonair, jumping in to steal the Mona Lisa from a museum. So here we are. Of course, the best way to infiltrate a museum is to hide in the toilet stall and just stand on the toilet while they come and check at night.
They never check those.
They never check those. So that's how I managed to hide here in this toilet. We are in a bathroom with nobody around, and yet it is a high-tech museum. So I've got these doors here that are locked. You see, I can't go through it. But they've got these high-tech gizmos, like locky door doohickeys, for getting through. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw a little hacky thingy on here. Bing, bing. Now you guys can see that I've linked Lavdoor. So if you go to that URL in the bottom left there, heist.link/bound R780, and then you type in list and hit enter, that will show you all the devices that I have connected with Hackymetrons.
Yeah, I just did that. I see a Lavdoor.
Oh, nice. Are you Mesca Squid or is that somebody else?
No. Did it already get hacked?
Yeah, Mesca Squid.
Oh.
Nailed it. Nice, dude. Okay,
Mesca
and he unlocked the
Squid
door.
On top of it.
All right.
Nice.
Sweet. Well done. Okay, let's get this robot. All right, so you can see I linked the robot too. His name is Maurice. So why doesn't somebody hack Maurice while we're here? And I'm also going to throw a thing on the rotunda door here. You guys can hack that. Where's Maurice at? And I'm going to throw something on the gallery door, and then I'm going to run back up here because Maurice will get me. Kawa hacked Maurice! Nice, Kawa. You guys are good at this.
On top of
You're a
this?
bunch of roguelike developers, so that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
you
now that
didn't
you've
even have
hacked
to explain
Maurice,
how the hacking works.
oh yeah, I didn't even get to tell you how. You all know command line interfaces for some reason. Now that you've hacked Maurice, oh nice, wax pancake. You can send Maurice north, south, east, or west. This Delph Bros thing straight ahead of me is north. That's the only way that you can know directions right now, unfortunately. So someone has sent Maurice north a couple of times, so he's facing the wall. He's kind of moved into the wall, which is great. I'm just going to try to run by. Nice. Nice. Good job, guys. If you really want to put Maurice out of commission, you could move Maurice east until he's past the lav door, and then you could close the lav door, and then you could lock it.
I think I already locked it when I was trying to screw with you.
Oh, someone already locked it.
I'll unlock it.
Yeah, move him a little further. A little further. East one more. Nice. Now, okay, great. Now someone can close the lab door. Actually, I can do it. Nice.
I got it.
Maurice is stuck in there. All right. Oh, I forgot to steal the cool Roguelike Celebration logo upstairs. Oh well.
Wait, go get it. Go get it. We got Maurice.
Maurice is up there.
Yeah. All
Did
right.
I get it? All right,
We got it. Someone's gonna move Maurice out of the way.
That was a bug. Okay, someone move. Okay. Maurice is now moving towards it. Okay, I'm just going to try to bob and weave Maurice. I got to get this poster. Don't shoot me, Maurice. Don't shoot me, Maurice.
Oh, that's such a cool poster.
Gotcha.
Oh,
that looked like it hit me, but it didn't for some reason.
this is going wrong. Close.
Okay, all right. Forget you, Maurice. I got the poster. It's worth it. It's totally worth it. And someone hacked the gallery door. Thank you. Could someone unlock the gallery door, and I'll head through that way. Could also go through Rotunda Gates. I just threw that. Someone can hack that one. Oh, nice. Great. You guys are awesome. All right, here we are. Let's see what we got over this way. We got a painting. Oh, there's another robot. Looks like it is named Billy.
Billy.
Someone can hack Billy. Meanwhile, I'll steal terrible drawing, horrible proportions. Don't lock me out of this room. It's my escape route. Zach hacked Billy. Fast hack, Zach.
Oh! It was only a
Sports
single
are hacked Rotunda Gate. Why don't you send Billy into that corner, Zach? That's east, I think. Definitely would not send Billy towards me so that he shoots me in the face. That would be very rude of you. All right, thank you. You're good. You're a kind soul. Well, should we keep going this way? No one's posting in the chat, or my chat is not loading, one of the two.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
So should we go this way, or should we go this way? Oh, let's hack these guys. Whoa. Got Cal and Ken. Security robot pair extraordinaire.
I got Ken. Someone else hacked Cal.
All right, let's get someone on Cal. We're all too busy hacking to talk. Fair enough.
It's true. It's an intense game.
Oh, someone
Someone
got
else
Ken.
hacked that out from under me.
Dang, you got. Oh, look, they're like dancing together. So you guys could send them west, and I'll be totally out of my way, or south, maybe even better. Just send them both really far south. Ken and Cal.
Apparently, my little CLI, I introduced a glitch where I'm putting an open bracket in front of people's names.
Oh, I didn't see that.
I didn't see that until just now. I'll have to fix that.
Hacking, yeah. So I didn't have time to explain the hacking because you guys are so good. It's just Mastermind, except that once we hack one device, what I could do is I could like remove the dongle like this, and then you guys will have to hack Rotunda Gate again if I threw it back on. But the password is the same, so if you memorize it, then that's the secret trick. You can hack it over and over again. I think what we'll do is I'm gonna run over this way, try to not get seen by Ken and Cal. Great. We're gonna throw a thing on the rear gates. Nice. Good job, Mikio. I'm gonna steal this. This is a sweet roguelike, by the way, if you want to play it. You should get that game.
I've heard of it. It's a good one.
$75,000 is how much that game is worth. And here's Ivy Door. We can hack that. So these are all paintings over here. I think we don't want to spoil everything, but we can get a little bit further here. By the way, this is a pre-built level because the procedural generation for the level doesn't quite work yet. But at some point, okay, sweet, nice work. How about someone unlocks the rear gates? Nice, excellent. But by the conference, hopefully we have that working fine. Rear access is a new door. Nice. Because actually, let's do a fun thing here. Someone hacked this alarm up here, rear access SOS. And then I'm going to destroy the door, but you guys can disable the alarm so that it doesn't make a sound.
I gotta say, this crowd, this is a great crowd. Like, they're hacking everything before I can do anything.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very, like, useless over here. Just, you know?
Yeah.
So I just got it. I'm supposed to be the ringer to make sure we can get through this level quickly.
Oh, someone hacked this alarm. Can someone disable the alarm then? Yeah, Neshio Squid, I think you're totally right. That's on our to-do list as a top-down 2D map. We kind of want to have the command line interface feel, but pull a little bit of the command line interface away, probably. Take some of the like modern GUI elements that make it feel better. All right, I'm going to assume this thing is turned off. Nice, you did it. So now I can jack this door open like this. And it does not make an alarm.
I just triggered it though. So
I heard it for a second. Okay, any nearby robots are gonna see me.
I'm a stinker.
Oh.
You don't have to help him, by the way, guys.
Yeah, you guys don't have
I feel
to
like
help.
you're all a little too helpful.
I'm gonna sneak by this camera. And this door doesn't have a lock. Oh, this is a really cool prototype, by the way. That's amazing. Game. Honey Talks, Hatchback, Stunt Simulator, Ghost Protocol. Okay. Oh, look!
How many plugs can you work into one demo?
It depends on how many paintings we find. Let's just for fun, let's destroy this door and get some robots chasing. And then you guys have to help me in a pitch.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
That's a lot of robots.
They're called Ike and Ike. Get him! Everybody sees me! It's the Mona Lisa! Hack them!
I can't hack under pressure, bro.
Oh! I'm like matrixing this. I'm getting really lucky with avoiding these things. I'm just gonna get the Mona Lisa. We did it. We did it.
Oh, I was about to hack Ike. I hacked Ike!
You hacked Ike!
Right.
So, that was the game. Thank you, everybody. So obviously there's a lot to this that's coming. One of the big things we're going to add is obviously the procedural elements as well as a sort of continuing story. So the idea is basically that you have a certain amount of like income that you get from paintings and a certain amount of money that you have to spend every day on like your hacking and all that stuff. So basically, you'll kind of proceed throughout the game, and it's this like risk reward of you got to steal the paintings and escape. We don't have escaping implemented yet, and try to like get as much as you can, because there are obviously a bunch of paintings that we didn't get this time. Anyway, that's the game. Thank you so much, everybody. I see your feedback and your comments already. We'll hang out in the chat, both Zach and I. My name's Eli, so you'll see me in the chat as Eli. And please give feedback and let us know what you thought.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Yeah.
It was a blast hacking with you.
Get out of this
Thanks
game that
so
has
much
no
for
quit button.
joining us, Delve Bros. I think that was an intense time. I think everyone had a lot of fun. Was much too busy hacking to chat. And look forward. So we're going to be getting another chance to play the new version of this in October. So it'll be fun to see what changes. And thank you so much.
Thanks so much, everyone.
All right. And that brings us to the end of the talks portion of this very special preview for Roguelike Celebration. The space is still going to be open for another 40 minutes, I believe, to just hang out, chat. As you've probably already noticed, you see the chat in the room that you are in. So if you want to find quieter spaces to talk, then move around among the rooms. You can leave notes up on the wall for people to find, all kinds of fun stuff like that. So enjoy your time here. Thank you so much for being here and for helping us check out this space and engaging with the speakers and asking such great questions. And we really hope to see all of you back here in October. That date for Roguelike Celebration, which I should know off the top of my head, but I don't want to get it wrong, will be October 3rd and 4th. Get your tickets. There are various pricing tiers, including free if you can't afford a ticket right now. And thank you so much for coming. Have a wonderful time. I will see you in the chat.